Wallace and Stevens coming round in front of us now. The first engine, well, not the first engine in the arena, because the first one was Bob Watts' Plowman's engine, which was in here already. We'll talk about that later. This one going past me now, and I'm not going to go into a lot of, we're not going to go into technical detail here because we haven't got time and we don't want to bore you with too much technical detail. It's a 7 horsepower Wallace and Stevens expansion engine, and it was built in 1919. Wallace and Stevens come down there from Hampshire, of course, near Basingstoke, and this is acquired by Claude Jessett over 40 years ago. It was laid up for a long time, needed a lot of work on it, and lots of the bits and pieces had gone missing mysteriously, but now fully rebuilt, and a lot of the work was done by just a small team of people. John Carver, who's on there at the moment, and a team of volunteers here. Obviously we don't do the boiler work because that's got to be done professionally up to a very high standard for safety purposes. Anyway, it's been running all over the place. We've got it on its own power. Yes, as it goes around, you'll see that John Carver's known for all the stuff here, John the Cat. He's got the cat on his shoulders, and I would say this, he looks so classic, it might be obvious a soft toy, but it's a real cat. Name's Tilly. If you go down and steam engine and line up afterwards, you'll be able to have a word with Tilly. She's quite happy and calm on the back, even when it's blowing the whistle. Another engine from the collection, Brian.
Yes, little Burrell Gold Medal tractor. This really is the one that actually started the collection here on College, because originally supplied you in 1920 to Dorking Rural District Council. Acquired this many years ago, and in fact started the collection. Rallied during the 60s, again the late 80s. The boiler work replaced in 2005 and 6. Since then, it's been out around rallies. It's repainted by the volunteers down here at Tinkers Park. We've got a brilliant collection of volunteers here, and they do a tremendous amount of work in keeping these engines up and running.
I was up here Thursday night, Brian, and I was looking at them getting ready for the engines for this weekend, and there was one particular chap, one of our trustees there, and he was actually cleaning the gears, the inside gears on that engine. It really is immaculate stuff. He's normally just covered in oil, but he was taking the trouble to clean it. It wasn't last week, it was just before the Heathfield show the week before. Really looking after that, it's like, really doing a top job.
The little Burrell Gold Medal was they had a competition many years ago to make a small engine that could be driven by a single person. And several manufacturers had a go, and in those days, if you were the winner, you received the gold medal. Well, Burrells were the winner in this competition, and hence they've always been known as the Burrell Gold Medal tractor.
Yeah, very proud of that. Organised by the RAC, was the most economical and reliable in its particular class. And as Brian just said, the big thing was it could be driven, anything under 5 tonnes could be steered and driven by one man. Although women these days have got lots of lovely lady volunteers, I'm happy to say, but those days it's one man driven and steered. And of course if you get an engine that was like that, you halve your workforce. That's the thing, just labour cost drop of engine. Right at the other end of the scale, just on past the stand. And they were known as Pat was their original name. John Pat had them. They went to Hardwicks of York to the scrapyard, but they weren't scrapped, and eventually they were owned by James Lowther, who used them for lake dredging, which was a very tough, muddy, wet, mucky job. And they came to us as the longest continually working pair of ploughing engines, not in just in the world. So we've got Windsor and Sandringham. here today. Avery and Porter, the most famous name of Rochester, built at Rochester, famous for their steamrollers more than anything. The one that's just gone past, running along the bottom now, with Claw Jesset Trust on the canopy, that is a Showman's engine. It's like Trigger's broom, I always say. It's had 3 new handles and several new heads. Started life as a light tractor, which is what it is now. I know you think of tractors as like farm tractors, but that's what tractor really derives from traction, a light traction engine, with ordinary wheels on it like it's got now. It would have been scrapped, but it wasn't for the fact that it was bought by Surrey County Council, and they converted it because it was built as a convertible. You could take the front wheels off and the rear wheels and put roller wheels on to make it into a steamroller. And because of that, it survived a long time. It was actually a 2-speed engine, which meant it quite fast for a steamroller. It got the nickname Nippy Roller, in fact. It came to Jesset Trust in the 1960s. It lasted all that time as a steamroller. And Owen mentioned, Claw Jesset at the time, wanted a Showman's engine because he was touring his fairground organs and his juvenile rides and running this rally. Whilst a lot of engines have been converted since, this has been probably longer than a Showman's engine than anything else. It had a new firebox in 2013. That's a big job. It's like having a complete new fireplace in your house. And it completed the London and Brighton run this year. A total run of over, well, getting on for 200 miles. From here to Crystal Palace, back down to Brighton and back here again, all under its own steam with a young crew led by Greg, and that was it's a remarkable achievement, the London to Brighton running in steam on the Southern Queen. And next we got the Jupiter, haven't we? That's totally different altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, just got a quick announcement before that. Down in the classic car display, there's a green MG. And I was told the entry number, which I've forgotten unfortunately, a green MG, and it is leaking petrol from the filler cap. So if you've got a green MG and you're parked in the display area down the field, can you go back to your vehicle? It's probably because the tank's warmed up and you filled it up with petrol, it's leaked up and it's just coming in. You might have to just turn the vehicle round or something to stop it. So it's a green MG down in the classic car display.
Yeah, we've had that problem before, Brian. A couple of years ago we had a problem and it was really coming out the tank at a fair rate. It wasn't a leak in the tank, but Brian's quite right, petrol expands, and obviously that could present a fire risk, so if that's an important announcement. Go back to your green MG if you've got a leaky petrol tank. How did you, Brian, with the Sentinel?
Sentinel timber tractor, this is another one of the Jesset collection here. It was built in 1934. Sentinels had their works at Shrewsbury up in Shropshire, and whereas everybody else used basically what we call the locomotive type boiler, all the engines you've seen so far have all got the locomotive type boiler, but Sentinels went for a vertical boiler, and that's in the front of the cab bit there. And this one was owned by a gentleman sadly no longer with us, Martin Barneycutt. And after he sadly passed away, the Trust acquired this at the end of 2006. It's also got a separate, it's got a winch on it because it's built as a timber tractor, and it's used for hauling timber on a timber trailer behind it, but it could also has a winch that could haul the timber out of the forest and also load it onto the trailer. And that's got its own separate steam engine to drive the winch. Massive great winch, you can see it at the back there. That thing with 2 prongs on sticking out the back is a ground anchor. That's dropped onto the ground, but as soon as you start winching, that locks into the ground, and instead of pulling the vehicle backwards, it locks it in place and pulls out whatever you're trying to winch.
Several years ago, Brian, we had an oak tree which had sadly rotted but was in danger of coming down in the wrong place, and we like putting trees up here, not pulling them down, but that one had to be brought down. But that was an old oak tree, and it weighed literally tons. It was in the middle of winter and the ground wasn't very hard, and we had an AC Matador and Jupiter pulling that, and it was a fine sight to see, doing the job that it was intended to do. A good old Turner road speed, that's been on the road as far as Banbury. You see it's got pneumatic tyres on because it was built in 1934 when by that time of course we had lots of diesel lorries, so it was a very competitive lorry on the road. In fact it had a higher speed than most of the diesel lorries at the time. We've got Vera in front of us coming round now, which is a Garrett of Leavesden, and this one has a bit of a history. It's a road loco, a heavy haulage loco. It weighs all of 20 tons. It's getting on for that weight. It was used in Northern Ireland by a company called John Harkness, who were based in Belfast near the famous Island and Wolf shipyards. And what it would do would be to hold all the heavy castings, and they were heavy, all the engineering parts for the big ships being built at Harland and Wolff. Now we'd never say that that was used for helping to build Titanic, but it was working in the yard at the same time as they were building Titanic. And it is quite likely that some of the loads it hauled at that time were used in the construction of those infamous ships, Titanic, Olympic, for the White Star Line. It is, again, rather like our flying engines. It has the history of being the longest continually working road locomotive in the country, because of course it's Northern Ireland, part of the Union, and it worked right through until about 1962. So it had a very long working life, being built in 1909 originally.
Just joining the line up now is Peter's other engine, the Tasker V2 steam tractor, built in 1918. And this one's a little bit unusual because most of the others are gear drums. This one's a chain drive to the back axle, so it's a little bit unusual. A small road-going engine. You'll notice there's two tanks that we call them belly tanks because they're strapped underneath the middle of the boiler between the front and back wheels. They are also filled with water because your main supply of water is where the driver and steersman are standing. They're standing on top of the water tank. But for road-going engines, you very often had these what we call belly tanks because they would be filled with water and linked up to the one in the tender, which meant you could go a lot further before you had to stop to take on extra water. Now the little Wallace oil bath tractor.
This was acquired by the current owners only in 2019. Ben Floyd and Guy Osborne, who are both trustees up here. Built in 1920. Notice on the canopy says Hollyfields of Oxford. They were hauliers and showmen, and rather like the gold medal tractor that we talked about earlier, this is what we call a light tractor, and could be driven and steered by one person. It's got a long history actually, this engine. It's always been kept in immaculate condition. Now, what would a light tractor be used for? Well, basically anything that you would see a sort of 7-ton lorry used for now. Hauling your house from one to the other in a Pantechnicon behind it, bringing the coal from the coal yard to the local for the local coalman, timber, building materials, general haulage. That's what these engines were used for, and as such they're quite nippy. You've got a top speed of that engine unladen without a load on the road of about 15 miles an hour, which you might think, well, that's very slow when you compare to your current car, but that was faster than anything going in its day. It would outrun any other car or lorry of its time. Very nice to see it here in super condition. Yeah, a couple of years ago I did a story about it. It was linked up to some special equipment, and they were comparing. It was Cambridge University comparing the output of that particular steam engine to modern steam engines. They got some quite interesting results. I won't go into it now, but of course it is a steam engine, which means that when it's all you can see coming out there through the top of the safety valves is steam. It's perfectly sound environmental engine, all right, yeah, there's some smoke when it starts up, fair enough, but it is a steam engine, powered entirely by steam. What about this one then? That Tasker roller.
Yeah, well, just bring out the other one. I was just talking earlier about the Borough Gold Medal tractor, where there was this competition to develop or design an engine that could be driven by one person. Of course, the one that we've just been talking about there, the little Wallace and Stevens, and the Tasker, the same or very similar models of that would have also been entered in the same competition, except the Burrows came out on top.
Wallace and Stevens weren't far behind, Brian, I tell you that. They were good engine, and one or two failed altogether, but the Wallace and Stevens did complete the course and made a Basingstoke. There are quite a few Wallace engines here in the ring today. What was that going around now? It's a Tasker,
Tasker. Taskers were built down at Andover in Hampshire, and this one, a little bit unusual. They tried an experiment, quite why I don't know. They tried this experiment with a 5-section front roll. If you've noticed any of the other rollers that we've had in, it's only got 2 sections of the front roller. This one's got 5. And it was done by Taskers as a bit of an experiment, but I don't think it caught on. I could imagine it with a little bit of wear there. You would be leaving ridges in the tarmac instead of following them out. You'd probably have to keep going over them far more times than you would normally. But it's certainly an experiment, and I've only ever seen it actually. I'm thinking back now, I have seen it on another engine, but I can't remember what the other engine was. This is the only one that I regularly see with the 5 rolls on the front of it.
Yeah. Built in 1909, originally as a tractor. Once again, it was appeared at the Royal Show in that year down in Hampshire. Converted by Taskers to a roller in 1930, and we've kept it the same because of that unique, it's now unique. Brian just said he's seen another one, I'm sure there is one other. Pretty well unique 5-roll front section. Because you've got to have 2 rolls, because when it's going around the corner, of course, you're thinking of differential. You've got your back wheels. You can put a pin in the back wheel to lock them together. So this is the difference between your car. This is your differential, if you like. That's why the front roll's in 2 sections. The back wheels are independent, but when you want them to be together to go up a steep hill, for instance, you can put a pin in and lock the differential. Now this one coming in front of the top end of the arena now is another Wallace and Stevens engine, but particular interest to me because it hasn't got the name on it, Endeavour. It is called Endeavour. You'll see it's got Advance on the side because